All right. Okay, so the first thing I want to just mention here is that all of this today is going to be a little bit speculative in nature because this settlement is not even final yet. And the DOJ still has to opine on it, and the court system still has to do what it's going to do. And if anybody is familiar with litigation, the one thing that you know for sure about the court system is that it's not going to be fast. It's going to take a long time. And there's a lot of things that could change. Now, I think that'll be mostly just the small details. I don't think that, overall the big picture is likely to remain pretty constant with what we have seen announced to us now. But even that could change. And so a lot of what we're talking about is a little bit of speculating about how these things will impact us. The other thing I'll just mention is that what I know for sure, having spoken with different people in the business who I trust and I know are really smart people, we're not all seeing it the same way. Even on our board of directors, we don't all think the same thing is going to happen. Everybody's speculating about what the changes will be in the marketplace, how we'll interact with our clients, who's going to get helped, who's going to get hurt, all of those things. And we don't really know this for sure. So, what we'll be doing is we'll be talking about how you can be prepared to adjust to whatever the outcome actually ends up being. And if you hear varying opinions on this call from people that, you got two smart people who don't agree on it, well, that's because this is the nature of this. It's a moving target for everybody. Um, my thoughts generally are like most people, when I first heard about this, I felt a little sense of disappointment that we were settling, and I wasn't sure if that was the right thing to do. And still, I'm not 100% sure that is the right thing to do. I think that it was an inevitability that it was going to. That's what most litigation does, is it settles. Um, and and so I had a little bit of fear about, wow, how is this going to impact me? And how am I going to have to change what I'm doing? And is this going to hurt me? And but I have come now to feel actually quite optimistic about it. And I think that some of the changes are going to cause the lower caliber agents to have to elevate their game to deliver to the client the service that they should have been giving to them from the beginning, especially for buyers. And I think that that's going to be a very good change for our industry. In our CE classes that I teach, I often talk about how the general public ranks realtors very, very low on the list of respectable professions. And I think part of the reason is because there's been a little bit of sloppiness in the way the relationship between the clients and the realtors have been handled in the past. And if you look at who the absolute top performing realtors are in the market, they're usually people who are using really solid documentation. They understand the listing agreement, how to use it, how to talk about it with the clients. And we will now see that level of sophistication come into the discussions with buyers. And I have a hard time seeing that as a negative thing. I can only see that as a positive thing. And as somebody who believes that he's especially good at dealing with those kinds of things and explaining those kinds of things to clients, I see that as a positive that I'm feeling very happy about. um, Anybody else on the board want to jump in here? Did we get Joe on? Joe, are you
Yeah,
there? Do you
yeah,
do you want
Joe's
to
on.
do you want to give us some of your initial thoughts on this?
Yeah, I actually had a few calls yesterday with some attorney clients of mine that were trying to understand it from their perspective, so they can answer questions that their clients are getting. And the overwhelming response from each one of them was, "Oh, is that all? That's all this means?" And because of the amount of information, misinformation that's out there, um, I think for everybody in the community, the first thing I would start off saying is change is an opportunity. Um, we may not have liked change being brought to us at any points in our life, but if you look back on most changes, you typically cause you to adapt and become more effective. Um, and this is no different. I know Pam can speak to this, but a lot of the commercial transactions, there's no offer of broker compensation being marketed on any of these buildings. If they are, it's very few. And depending on how the market swings, sometimes those broker compensations could be higher, sometimes they could be slightly lower. What we need to focus on for all of our abilities is the opportunity to present value in how you are going to help move your clients forward. The share with them the process and everything you're going to do to navigate on their behalf. We're talking specifically buyers. And I know for me, as the bulk of my career, I've spent probably 80%, 75 to 80% of my business has been on the listing end. I'm a huge believer in buyer agents. And I explained to my sellers, and this is not new, like for years, even in the hottest markets, they're like, well, why would we pay that? I go, do you want to work with somebody who's like doesn't know what they're doing, or do we want to attract the best of the best? And that's really the opportunity for all of us to raise our game and become more effective at what we do. At the end of the day, we can join the masses in the panic, or we can calm ourselves, get our feet settled, and learn how we are going to persevere through this. Because just like any other market change, it's an opportunity to see who wants to go grab some market share. So those are my thoughts.
Thank you, Joe. I appreciate that. Pam, I know you've been pretty dialed in on this, and you have a lot of really direct communication with the executives in the EXP corporate world that are boots on the ground on this. So, what thoughts do you have on it?
I absolutely 100% echo everything you said and everything Joe said. So I don't want to reiterate it all. However, from a corporate level, what we do know is that EXP has already been all over this for the last 2 years. So there is no better place to be as far as new forms, as guidance. And this is like walking a tight wire right now. None of us actually know everything that's going to lay out, but we do have a very good foundation of what we can start looking at and doing and being prepared now for when the final ruling does come down, which is supposed to take effect in June. So I feel very confident that we're in the right home, we're in the right house, we've got the right agency that's protecting us in this. And it is just such a huge opportunity for market share. And I just want to add one piece of advice, if I could. And this is a Jordan Peterson take. So I know that you're going to love this, Cody. However, it's the best analogy that I can give for this is that, there is a ton of misinformation. So be educated. And there's a ton of scarcity out there. So flip that and look at what are my opportunities in this. And Jordan Peterson put it this way: when God came to Noah and he was like, hey, there's going to be problems. So, like, you want to get your stuff in order right now, right now, right now. And Noah looks in the sky and there's not one cloud. However, God said there's going to be problems and there's going to be turmoil. So, thank goodness Noah started building that ark, right? 2 by 2, they went. And whether you believe in the Bible or believe in God, it's just an analogy, right? So Noah didn't wait. He didn't him and haw about it. He didn't like gripe and groan. He went and built an ark so that when the flood came, he was protected. And so right now, we just have to be as proactive, as optimistic as we can. We need to start building the ark and embracing it so that we're not left in the flood. And it's just the best analogy I could come up with. And I feel
I
like
love that.
this Zoom is the first step in that direction.
Yeah, thank you, Pam. Denise, I know that you have trained, you have an amazing training and have trained for many years on using the buyer broker agreement and have like a 99% higher rate, which is pretty dang good. And give us your thoughts on the opportunity of these changes in that regard.
Yeah, I'm excited out of my mind, just to be perfectly honest with you. I spent decades training on a buyer's brokerage agreement and having broker owners tell people that were in classes with me that I didn't know what I was talking about. And I can't help but think if we would have been proactive and taken this approach and this high level of service and value with our clients, it wouldn't it take billions dollars of losses and court systems to get our attention. Frankly, the National Associations of Realtors is the largest lobbying group out there. It takes a lot to get our attention. And basically, what they're saying is that um, buyers deserve the same representation sellers deserve. And the only problem that is on the table right now, and we were in a team meeting yesterday, and it became very clear to me, is that we must be willing to show property that we have to negotiate our compensation. See, there's been a rule all along that said you have to show every property regardless of compensation. And now we really get to see that that's true. When you think about the opportunity to become hired, the one thing that's interesting that I'm hearing is not just about agency, however, employment. And that's a very different bridge that we're going to be crossing. However, when we think about the way we will be able to represent a buyer in the truest form of protecting and promoting their best interest because they hire us. And we hear all this about value. What's the value? What's the value? And I keep asking those questions. And I have to be honest with you, Cody, and everyone on this call. I've yet to have someone articulate to me a value I would pay 3% for. And I'm even looking in my own house, by the way, right? What is this percentage and where will it be? And by the way, we will be able to talk percentages in the future. And so we believe in the value of representation, the value of agency, that everyone deserves the right to be represented. And in the beginning, it's scary. And Leo was talking about hundreds of things are going to come to the top, hundreds of different ideas about how this is going to all roll out. Be part of the conversation. What do you think? If you're brand new in the business, I tell you, you bring an incredible perspective to those of us that have been in the business decades. And for those of us that have been in the business decades, just get over yourself. It's going to look different moving forward. And I'm excited about what really is the protection of homeowners' rights. I'm really excited that a buyer's brokerage agreement allows a buyer the chance to hire the very best in the industry. You know, you're hearing lots of things about, buyers that are going to be calling listing agents that are going to be paying fees to open doors. And really, at the end of the day, a buyer is going to hire an agent that they believe can move forward their hopes, their dreams, their goals, that will see real estate as an opportunity to build wealth and true retirement. And so we have the opportunity to be those people. We have the opportunity, just by nothing else than being on this call, of saying, I'm willing to rise above the tide. I am willing to become, and Leo used this in some training that did the day before and yesterday. I watched it for a second time. Meet sellers where they want to be served from. Meet buyers where they want to be served from. And so the question that I would have for everyone on this call is, if you were presented with your value proposition, what would you pay for it? An incredible man by the name of Thomas Wilhite introduced this saying to me, and it said, and it was really about find a need and fill it. The greater the need, the more someone is willing to pay for it. You see, it's never about compensation. It's always about representation. And so what is the value that we believe? Do each of you believe that the best decision anyone can make is to hire a buyer's agent? Let me see your hands. Do you believe that is true? Then stay with that and be able to articulate that in such a way that there is zero question about the value you bring. And by the way, all that is changing, in my humble opinion, is the way that we talk about it, right? We're talking about a service fee versus a commission. You're starting to see some of these terms change. Don't be afraid of them. We're talking about a buyer's closing cost versus a co-op commission. right? It's going to move from one side to the other, and there'll be lots of changes, right? FHA, VA, conventional, they'll change guidelines. Trust me, I do not believe that loan guidelines are going to stay exactly where they are, because buyers will need solutions. And so that's where I'm at right now. Excited about what's in front of us, excited about buyers really being represented, and exciting for each of every one of you to take some market share from people that are unwilling to grow and become all that realtors will be in this next generation.
Yeah, thank you, Denise. I love what you were saying about value there. You know, people have constantly ask me about how it is that 80% of my listings that I do are at 7% rather than a more standard 6%. And it's because of value. And I don't have to sell that idea. People choose it, and they choose it because they see the value. So I love that. Okay, so there are some specific things that we need to get into here about this that I have promised people we will talk about today. And so we'll go to that here in just a minute. I do want to give Steve just a couple of seconds here to talk a little bit about his perspective of longevity. I can always remember how long Steve has been in the real estate business, because I was 1 year old just learning how to walk, literally, when he was getting his license. He's been in the business for 46 years. So you've seen a lot of changes, Steve. Give us that calming understanding of that we're going to be all right.
So, Cody, I've been in the business 45 years. And one of the things that I know is that the things are always going to change. NAR started back in 1908, and I was there to see it. Well, okay, maybe I wasn't, but there's been a lot of changes ever since then. You know, until 1996, we were subagents of the seller, which meant, and from 1996 until now, we've broken out and said that we're the agent of the buyer. But when someone says, well, how are you getting paid? We tell the buyer, oh, don't worry about it. It's not going to cost you anything. The seller's going to pay me. Well, the truth is the seller is still paying the fee. So I mean, the buyer is still paying the fee because it's all part of the cost. It's all part of the purchase. All we're doing is shifting the location of that fee, just like Denise said. And so it's just an opportunity for us to have that. I love that Denise has been teaching us for years that we need to be doing the BBA. So this is just an opportunity for us now to use the buyer's brokerage agreement and talk about that fee. In my mind, the seller is probably still going to make those concessions. I had this conversation with a listing I took yesterday, and we talked about that compensation. Do you want to offer it? How much do you want to offer? Right now, we've been seeing all those offers. I've seen anywhere from 0 already as offer of compensation, all the way up to above 3%, which is rare, but you do see it. And now that's just going off of the MLS. And now we're going to be making phone calls to the agent and asking if there's an offer of compensation. And we're going to negotiate that into the closing costs. I don't see this as as they say, a nothing burger.
Cody, can I say one thing on that real quick?
Yep.
So we've been on our team using BBAs for decades, and I am an agent that collects the difference between what the co-op is and what we've negotiated. So I have lots of people on here that come from my team that will tell you that is true. There has only occasionally ever been someone that could not afford it. And those are anywhere up to 1% is the highest amount that we've ever collected. And we do it every single time. And we do not have clients that say one thing about it. And they give us 5-star reviews and they refer their friends and family. This is really mindset. This is a mindset issue. And so
Yeah.
I wanted to say we are collecting it.
When I first got into the business, I didn't know that you could be a buyer's agent without a BBA. And back then the BBA had this little clause in there about collecting an upfront retainer. And so I was collecting money up front, and everyone was like, what? And I didn't even know you could do it a different way. And it was never a problem because it just explained what it was, why it is. So I think, again, this all comes back to the conversations that we're going to be having with clients. And those kinds of things are things that we should be discussing together as agents here. Some of you have seen the YouTube video that I put out there, but I want to just reiterate one little concept that I said in there, and that is that yes, there are going to be changes within the general structure, but I think that the market is the strongest driver of activities, much stronger than litigation or association rules and things like that. And if the market didn't value in general the participation of realtors, in today's age of the internet and Zillow and all of those kinds of places where they could come together, that marketplace could bring buyers and sellers together without any representation if they wanted to. They would have done it a long time ago because people don't like to pay for something that they don't think there's value in. I've been asked the question, well, what about home builders? Are home builders going to now stop paying buyer's agents? Yeah, they're going to try. They've been trying since 1903, right? Like builders don't want to pay buyer's agents unless they have to or unless they see that there's value there. And guess what? They have been. So within the general structure, there's going to be a lot of changes, but the general structure overall, I think the market forces are the strongest. And we're going to continue to see clients want to be represented by good, solid realtors. And so I know that not everybody agrees with me on that because some others see a lot more pressure on buyer's agents than what I'm describing there. But I believe that the right approach from a buyer's agent will end up having a stronger relationship that's better with the client. I mean, what I love about this is literally gone are the days that somebody can call you and 5 other agents within 10 minutes of each other and say, could you all go show me these different houses? And you think you're working with a buyer when they're really 2-timing you or 3-timing you or 4-timing you, right? Those days are going to be gone. And I'm having a hard time seeing how that's a negative. I can only see that as a positive thing. So those things are good. Now, there was a call that Leo did. Leo is our chief strategy officer. And that is out there on YouTube and on Workplace. And I encourage everybody on this call, regardless of which brokerage you're with, to watch it because they actually provided some really good scripts and clauses that can be used to bring clarity in these changes with your clients. And so we won't rehash them here. It's a very good resource for you to watch it. And I encourage everybody, even if you were on the call live, to rewatch it because there was some great information in there. And what I love about it is that Leo, he describes this being a really flat organization. I can tell you there are many people within Synergy community that have had direct conversations with Leo, who is the chief strategy officer for the entire freaking company. Which is a worldwide organization, and he's willing to get on the phone and talk with us one-on-one. He was even offered to be on this call with us today, but he's on a plane right now, or he would be on it. So I encourage you to watch those things and know that you have us as the board of directors, you have the agent advisory committee, but you can go up the chain there and talk directly with the executives who are seeing this from a very high level perspective. One thing I do want to mention specifically that you need to be very careful of, and I think everybody should start this now, even before these changes are implemented. If you advertise in any fashion that your services are free, then you will not be able to be compensated later for your services. Okay, so that language that a lot of people use is going to have to change because if you say that you're willing to do this for a flat fee of $1,000, and then later that particular seller was willing to compensate 3% of the purchase price to the buyer's agent, it looks as though it's going to be very difficult for you to go up. It can only go down. So You'll want to understand that so that as you're talking with buyers and establishing your relationship with them, those things are very clear from the beginning what your compensation can be and will be and what the different methods are for that to occur. One of the things that I find very interesting about this is that I've seen a lot of videos out there of people sort of role playing conversations between buyers and sellers or listing agents and sellers. And all of them sort of paint this picture of sellers being very happy that they don't have to pay buyers agents anymore. But what I think is hilarious is that I'm not seeing a lot of people remembering that what do most sellers become the minute they sell their house? A buyer. So, I mean, you're paying for this one way or the other unless you're going to go it alone, right? And again, I think that the market has shown us that the market values being represented. And thank you, Steve, for the history of that, where we actually at one point established that realtors can be a representative for the buyer. And so I think that that's a very interesting concept to be thinking through. And I can tell you, having done a lot of training on listing presentations, having sat at Joe's feet and listened to him on some of his listing presentation stuff and his scripts and handling objections and stuff like that, that the conversation with the seller about how the buyer's agent will be compensated could have been happening all along. You should have been having this conversation with your sellers. It's literally just putting a different name on the same conversation, maybe some different vernacular, but the actual mechanics of your conversations with the seller should be very much similar to what they have been. Now, one of the questions I've been getting a lot is concerning the fact that some of the larger brokerages are excluded from the settlement. And what is the difference between we, the individual agents, being excluded, or sorry, being included and protected by the settlement, if you will, versus these larger brokerages? And I don't know if I don't think she's on here. I can't. Marissa, if you're on here. Marissa in our group spoke
Yes,
yesterday
I'm
with,
here.
okay, so she spoke yesterday with Leo, because she had some concerns about the fact that EXP, the brokerage, wasn't excluded or was excluded, sorry, wasn't included in the settlement. And Leo explained to her that right now they're in the process of filing motions that would join all of these existing lawsuits together so they can be handled at once. And that EXP has already set aside a budget, in the accounting term, they've reserved for it. And that the amount that they've reserved is more than sufficient to cover whatever the outcome is, whether that is to continue to litigate or to settle. My experience in litigation is that when these large class action lawsuits happen, the big organization plows the path, and then all of the ones on the sidelines jump into that path, and they all get resolved in almost the exact same manner. And usually that happens very quickly and pretty efficiently. So the getting to the finish line for NAR might not be that efficient of a process, but they will basically pave the way for all of these other brokerages or associations to get their house in order and get things settled quickly for themselves as well. And so I don't think we need to be too concerned about that from just a viability of the company standpoint. It's if you understand financial statements, which are all public since it's publicly traded, you can look at those financial statements and you can see quickly that we are in a very good spot as a company. And so my personal advice to you would be much more concerned about how this impacts your day to day than how it impacts the industry as a whole, or any specific brokerages specifically, because that's what will impact you personally the most. And it's where the biggest difference will be made in how you need to navigate your own business and your own business plan. Okay, do we have any questions that people would like to ask? I think there's probably been some in the chat. I haven't been able to pay attention to 6 things at once, but if there's any questions in the chat that anyone from the board wants to answer, please jump in and do that.
I think one of the things that I'm not sure if it's in there, however, I know that people are asking me about is, how will I know what the seller's willing to offer? Right? And there's 2 components that I think are really important that you have to pay attention to. And if you're not starting to use a BBA today, start using it today. We should Cody talk as a board about some trainings on a BBA presentation that will get hired all the time. So critical part is the maximum amount that you collect in as a fee for buyer's representation of the BBA is the maximum amount that you can be paid. So if in the BBA you say that that I'm going to do 2 apples as a cost for my services, and then you show a property and you find out later that the seller was willing to pay 3 apples, you may only collect 2 apples. So keeping that in mind as you're going, and this is an abundance scarcity mindset, really establishing, are you the dollar store? And trust me, more dollar stores are going to show up. Or are you Bloomingdale's? High level luxury, this is what I charge, whatever it is, totally cool. It will be negotiated with your buyer. And then when you're writing contracts, and this is contrary to everything you've ever been taught in real estate, right? We're not allowed to discuss commissions in the contract is no longer going to be on the table. That's going to be where it's going to be negotiated. And it's going to be negotiated in the form of buyer's closing costs. And so if you're not using a buyer's brokerage agreement right now, this is the time to get busy on it. And when Cody's talking about a business plan, you're establishing, and it's great with EXP, we get to be whoever we want. I've got no skin in the game who you decide to be. However, just know that that's who you are and build a business to that and build your contracts that support that. So that's a nuance that is different than what we've done before.
So
I see you're unmuted.
Can I just jump in on that too? And Denise, that was so perfect. And from the other side of it, just a little piece of advice, and do understand that all of our contracts and forms will be changing. The BBA is supposed to be changed down to 1 page from what it is right now, which I think is 2 or 3 pages. Another thing that we probably will start using is a commission agreement, and these are very popular in commercial real estate. So when you find out, the first thing you're going to do before you show a property is you're going to find out what the compensation is, and that's handled in a conversation with the listing agent. And don't be afraid to do that; it's necessary. And a lot of times we get that in writing. So there could be like a commission agreement. I would suggest that's going to start being used widely in transactions. And that's basically a contract between you and the listing agent, clarifying exactly what that commission is on the upfront. You want everything in writing. Sometimes, is it okay to show a property based on an email conversation with a listing agent declaring what the compensation to you would be, whether we call it commission, whether we call it compensation? Absolutely, because intention is always relayed through emails. And a lot of times, if you do ever have to go to task with somebody on a transaction, your email correspondence weighs more heavily than any contracts, because intention is relayed through correspondence. So that's another document or contract, if you will, that's going to become widely popular as a commission agreement. And then moreover, Denise touched on this, we'll likely start to see commission breakdown in the PSA, and it will state who's paying it. Right now, that's a very common practice in commercial real estate, and we're probably going to start adopting that in residential real estate too. So it's something that you want to address head on, and you want to protect yourself, and at least get it in the form of an email in writing, so that you're very clear and you have that as backup.
This is a paradigm shift. And one of those moments, it's kind of like there's a wave coming, and it's an opportunity. The BBA is going to be required, and this is one of those Wayne Gretzky moments where we go to where the puck is going to be. The puck in mid-July is going to be where we are required to use the BBA. We might as well start using it now, getting familiar with it, comfortable with it, and embrace it. Like Denise has been trying for so many months to get us to do. We're going to be using it anyway. That's the big change. And the document is sitting in SkySlope right now. And in the next 48 hours, EXP is going to have a document for us, for the seller and for the buyer as well, for us to look at. At least that's what I've been told.
You know what's so interesting, I think, about this is that before these changes, there was sort of this like written, unwritten rule that as a buyer's agent, if you look in the MLS and you see a 1% co-op, you're not supposed to cringe. You're supposed to say, oh, it's okay, I'm going to show that property anyway. And it's not supposed to impact which properties you do and don't show, right? And this is one we can only speculate on how this will all shake out, because who knows. But it's almost as though this is saying to buyers agents, you can say that now. You contact the listing agent. There's nothing there for you. You have to negotiate that directly with your buyer. If the seller's not willing to pay it, that seller puts themselves at a competitive disadvantage to selling their property in the same market that other sellers are willing to compensate a buyer's agent. So I love the transparency that's going to happen with all of this, because everybody's assuming that this is only going to help the clients. But man, I don't know. I think that there's some good things for us. And
100%.
I think that the most difficult things right now related to all of these things that we're facing is just the misperception and the complete baloney that is being reported by people who know nothing about real estate. I mean, Joe Biden we had to, as an association, we had to refute what he said, that this is now going to make it, for the first time ever, people can negotiate their commissions. No, right? The commissions have been negotiated forever. Just ask the guy who loves to do the 7% listing presentation, right? So this is such an opportunity for you to be talking with clients, buyers, sellers, people who are future buyers, future sellers, and establish for them that you know what you're talking about. When I talk about the difference between a lead and a client, remember, one of the things I always talk about is that they have confidence in your competence. And this is an opportunity like you've never seen before to show them that you have competence in the market. You know what's going on. You know how you're going to navigate this. You can explain why this is better than it was before, all of those kinds of things. I saw at one point, Dave Reichert, you had your hand up. Do you still have a question that we want to get to? Okay, we'll go to Kim. Do you have a question, Kim?
I don't have a question. I was just clapping for you.
Oh, thank you. I'll always take the applause. Anybody else have a question? If you do, unmute and just pipe away on the question.
Yeah, I got a question. So I'm hearing, like, it's like everybody's hearing a lot of back and forth in regards to buyers agents going away and things like that. And there's a lot of, like you said a few minutes ago, misinformation out there. I do know that, like, there is going to be a good portion of buyers that are not in a position to pay a 3% commission on top of, things like closing costs and stuff like that. What my question is I'm part of this real estate mastermind group on Facebook, and somebody commented in there about, maybe a valuable option of moving forward to deal specifically with buyers that can't afford to pay on their own side is offering some sort of like consultation fee where you're not exactly their agent, but you're charging a flat fee of, say, $100 an hour or something like that, as just simply to consult on the contract itself and not physically represent them. Do you think something like that would be a valuable option moving forward for those certain people that aren't able to do that?
Can I
Take
take
it,
it?
Pam. Take it, Pam.
I've actually been speaking with several real estate attorneys on this subject matter because, you know, what happens at time of turmoil is that new businesses will pop up, right? So are you going to see real estate attorneys start offering services exactly like you're talking about? For a flat fee, they'll review contracts. Yeah, we probably will see that. But let's be honest, that is not our value proposition. That's not our value proposition at all whatsoever. And I believe that we would be doing our industry a disservice to move to a service like that. Think about everything you do in a day to day. I mean, God loved the buyer's agent. That's why I was primarily a listing agent. The amount of work you guys have to do, you know, comping that property, figuring out what it's going to appraise for, going through the 498 pages of CIC documentation to make sure that it fits their needs, their wants, and their desires, everything from point A to point B. You could review a contract and you could give them some advice on it, but that is not our value proposition in totality. And I think we'd be ripping the industry off to like take it in that direction. And you know, a couple other things is that I believe the spirit of this lawsuit was genuinely stemmed from a thought process that realtors were increasing values of properties by NAR and our local boards allowing certain commissions to buyers representatives being baked into the sales price. You know, the truth of the matter is, if you go to a listing presentation today and you're talking to a seller who has the same exact model that sold yesterday for 350,000, but the seller now has information that maybe he doesn't have to cooperate and pay a buyer's broker's commission, do you think he's going to list his house for a penny less than 350,000? There's this misconception that property values are going to come down now because commission is negotiable or because
Good afternoon and good morning, depending what part of the country you're tuning in. So we have had an eventful 72 hours in real estate world.
Sorry, Pam. I couldn't find the mute button fast enough.
That's okay. That's not going to happen. You know, no seller is going to take less than their neighbor actually sold their property for, maybe over a period of time. But, you know, all of this has to bake in. And we want to continue to provide those top level services, those top tier services from start to finish, soup to nuts, and be the best buyer's broker we can possibly be.
How to move forward. So I have.
Denise, you're muted.
Yourself and
Can you
background because
mute everyone,
make
Cody?
sure you guys understand is
It's coming from you, Denise.
this is how we.
It stops when I mute you. Okay.
So that's just my opinion. I've talked to a lot of highly professional real estate attorneys on this subject matter. You know, be careful of all of these new things popping up. And that's just my opinion on that. Are we going to start seeing?
Pam, what you're saying there is that the value that a buyer's agent brings, the reviewing the contract is a very narrow sliver of the total picture. Strategy is what gets you hired. I one time had a woman come up to me at church. She had an agent that they had submitted 33 offers and none of them had been accepted. And I said to her, whoa, like, what's your strategy with your agent? And she's like, I don't know. We don't have a strategy. Well, that's why you're not getting any of your offers accepted. So the strategy includes knowing what's happening in the marketplace, knowing what buyers and sellers are giving and taking from each other in these transactions, knowing what the market value is, how to do a CMA, all of those kinds of things. Somebody who can advise on the contract is leaving out all of those other things. And those things are really important. So she fired that guy, hired me. We only wrote 3 offers and 2 of them, we got the counter offers back to our favor. So, and that's only because we had implemented a strategy that could actually work. and their first realtor was not providing the value of a strategy, was just basically firing out offers. So that's definitely going to continue. And Cody, I do think that there will be a lot of people who will try on a lot of different sizes of this, like, okay, how do I navigate this? Um, and I think that there will be some people that are actually successful in doing some of those kinds of things. But when Zillow was piloting their instant offers program, I was one of the agents that helped them research some of this. They approached me and asked me to be like an intermediary between the buyers and the sellers in a system that was bringing the buyer and sellers together. And let me tell you that what I learned from that experience was that these clients need us. I mean, it was like, it was so much more obvious than it had ever been to me before that this is something that happens maybe a few times in their lifetime. That is one of the biggest transactions that they will ever do. And they feel the need to have somebody telling them how to do it the right way. And since you walk the walk every day, you can establish yourself as the authority on that.
And Cody,
Ashley, you have a question.
I love what you just said. And let me just expound on that really quick, is that we need to keep the long-term vision and not a short-term solution, right? Because not every short-term solution has longevity behind it. I mean, let's just look at like the self-checkout thing. Guess who's doing away with all their self-checkouts now? It was a great short-term solution, but Walmart's getting rid of every single one of them because the theft is too high and it doesn't work. The reward is not as great. And so I believe that a lot of these types of solutions that are going to come up are simply short-lived solutions. And we want to remain long-term focused on real estate as a profession.
Yeah, and I
Yes,
mean,
thank you.
Pam explained it perfectly, and more or less, I agree with everything that she said, and that's exactly how I was feeling about the situation. I just really wanted to ask the question to the group just to kind of make sure I wasn't the only one feeling this is the correct answer and that is not a solution.
Yeah, great question. Cody's always come up with awesome ideas. This is how it works. So for sure that's the case. Ashley, you have a question?
I do. Good morning, everybody. So I'm on Denise's team, and we've always used the buyer brokerage agreement where in there it says that if you cheat on us and write an offer with another agent, we get paid anyway. So I guess my question comes from where I'm hearing things where buyers could potentially go unrepresented. How does that work if a buyer brokerage agreement is mandatory to even show a home? So I feel like I'm missing information there on how those pieces fit together or where that scenario would come up for a buyer.
I think the premise of that, and others can pipe in on this, but the premise of that is that buyers will contact listing agents directly and will try to negotiate where they don't have to have representation. Now you're right, because then that listing agent, who's also a licensed realtor, is going to have to establish very clearly whether or not they are representing that buyer or just the seller and accommodating the showing. Those kinds of details, I think, are the things that will be determined and deciphered over the coming months, because lots of times there's kind of like a broad brush stroke on this is going to be the new policies. And then everyone stops and says, well, what about this? And what about that? And what about this scenario? And what about that scenario? And so I think we'll be seeing a lot more of clear direction on those particular things happening, but it will clearly be always an option for a buyer to go unrepresented, as it always has been. This is the United States of America, at least as it stands today. That's going to be a right that a buyer is going to have forever.
I would add one thing to that, Cody. I think that question is one of the biggest opportunities that is in front of us. So if you imagine currently today, the chaos of finding their own properties, contacting the agent, then going to the property, and now you layer in every time they talk to a new listing agent, having to potentially sign a limited, and that we're talking about exclusive representation and limited representation are the terms they're using. So potentially they would have to sign 10 limited representation agreements it becomes so overwhelming. Our value proposition has actually been strengthened. We do all that for you.
It's a great point.
So
Yeah.
these are the things I want you to be thinking about, like from an abundant point of view, creative, outside the 9 dots, like how would I feel if I had to do that? And that's where I think we'll win. Great question, Ashley.
We're gonna go to Dave for his question. I just want to mention here, I'm gonna hand hosting duties over to Pam because I need to switch to my phone and get on the road here while we continue this discussion. But Dave, go ahead.
Okay, so not so much a question, but a comment. And obviously, by the amount of people, we have 48 people on this call. Clearly, this is something that's on everybody's radar. I just wanted to tip my hat to the board of directors and EXP as a whole, but definitely the Synergy Community board of directors for making sure you guys are all over this and making sure that we as agents, as boots on the ground, know what's up, clearing it up. You guys have a plan for getting those on board and trained up with their buyer brokers agreement. So this is just an opportunity to say thank you for everybody, to you guys for doing that for us.
Well, we absolutely appreciate that, Dave. And we should also mention that you are the chairperson of the Agent Advisory Committee. And so you are also a great person to contact anybody on this call that might have questions. You guys, the Agent Advisory Committee, you guys work so hard to bring the board items that, that are on everybody's mind. And so we appreciate you guys, and you're in the line of fire too.
Let's go, everybody. Seriously, though, no. But yeah, if there's anything you guys want and you think you want to do it anonymously or whatever, that's what we're here for. So definitely reach out to us. Yeah, and I appreciate the plug for the AC. Appreciate you.
Absolutely. Do we've got any other questions out there? It looks like we have a comment. The way you all have explained all of this makes me breathe a sigh of relief. And good. That's exactly how we want you to walk away from this. We're not going to be able to answer every question today. There's still a lot of things left to unfold. However, we can handle this with dignity and grace and the understanding that, it really is, even though there's fundamental change going on, I believe it's just elevating the industry, like Denise was saying.
And get excited because it's changing tomorrow. Whatever we're talking about today, that just know 30, 60, 90 days. It's funny. Leo said at least 3 times, I reserve the right to change my mind. So just keep that in mind as you're moving forward. Don't get stuck into anything.
Marissa
Awesome.
has a question.
Yes.
Hey guys, I just wanted to thank you all. It was great speaking to Leo, but also just kudos for opening this up to other brokerages as well. I think that in this time, we have to, regardless of what brand we're affiliated with, we need to help each other and elevate the industry. And I think the other thing that we didn't really talk about much, we're buyers and listing agents. So I think it's incumbent upon us to explain to our sellers, especially at certain price points where we know there's going to be a lot of VA or FHA buyers, just what the reality is about these buyers and whether or not they can cover their own closing costs, not to mention agents' fees. So I think that the way that we take our listings is going to be pivotal. We can be greedy about it, or we can say, this is what's in my seller's best interest, and to provide whatever 2 apples, 3 apples to the selling agent, to the buyer's agent, is what's in the best interest of marketing this property and getting it sold. So thanks again, everybody.
No, thank you. I appreciate that. And you're right. At the end of the day, what do we really sell? We sell information. It's all about information about values, information about strategy, information about the market. So the more information we have, the better equipped we are to actually close transactions. So Steve, thank you. I see that you put some information in here that if we get into our SkySlope account, we can look under Office Docs and then look under Listing Writer. So the documentation is already coming in, guys, and it's going to be fast and furious. And we will do our best to keep you abreast of everything as a board and as an AAC. And Tara, I think that's a great idea. Tara is inquiring if there's any way we can prepare any assets as a whole, so that you guys could start, delivering real information out there. And again, there's power in numbers, and information is powerful. So it is our job as an industry and the professionals to kind of calm the waters and spread more truth than hysteria. So Tara, I'll get with the AAC and we will see if we can get something done before end of week.
Yeah, Pam, and this is Cody again. I'll just mention that we've already been discussing all of the different trainings that we think will be helpful to our group. How to use the BBA, of course, will be one of the things, but there will be lots of other things that we need to incorporate into that. And so we are on that, discussing it, preparing it. Just be watching, because in the coming months, there's going to be a lot of training.
We have a question from Deborah.
Yes, I am a new agent and I just want to make sure that I am understanding. So I've been trying to find, new people to work with. And one of the things that I've been doing as my campaign is the home value, and I have received positive response from that. Cody said that we shouldn't advertise our service for free. So does that include also like doing a CMA and home value? Is that part of it?
No, that is not what we're talking about here. So this Cody's comment was, I'm a buyer's agent. Hire me. You don't have to pay me because the seller does. So therefore, my service to you is free.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
So that's what we're talking about. And I would be careful, this is my opinion, in using the word free, because it gives a impression of no value, right? So I always think, is that word even necessary? Instead, it would be, oh my gosh, I have a service, and knowing the cash in your home is as important as knowing the cash in your checking account. May I give you a balance sheet? Right? So that might not be what you decide to use down the road. However, can you hear how that sounds different?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I love it. Another great delivery is complimentary, right?
Yes.
I deliver you a complimentary home evaluation. I'd love for you to see your housing checking account.
Yeah, baby, all day long. And then what do you do with that cash? Right? Buy a building.
Thank
a lot
you.
of it, and words are very powerful. So we've talked about a lot of words, and it's critical that we use our words and choose our words very carefully moving forward with this information, because words are very powerful.
So I have a bit of an aha moment. Cody's been teaching us about the 3% and the 4% option, which on the listing side. And it occurs to me that we can now have a 3% and a 4% option on the buyer side. This is what I do for you for 3%, but for 4%, these are all the additional services that I provide for you. I don't know. What do you guys think? It seems to me that we can create more value for ourselves now and focus on the value that we're really providing for the buyer.
Perfect.
I love it. I think we're pretty much at about time. So, and I know we all have a lot of work to do. We got to get out there and keep learning about this and incorporating it into our business. Unless there's any other pressing questions out there, we're going to go ahead and wrap. And believe me, this conversation's not over. We will be having many more of them. We'll start rolling out the trainings, get on those assets. If you do have a burning question, please just go ahead and unmute yourself and you can ask it now. Going once, going twice, 3 times a lady. Okay. Cody, do you have any closing remarks for us? Are you out there?
Thank you to everybody who participated today. And like Pam said, we'll do this again here soon, as there's so much that's going to be changing and so much we don't know yet, but as we know it, we'll get back on Zoom and we'll make them shorter next time. But yeah, we'll do this again.
Great job.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks so much.
Thank you, guys. Have a great day.
Bye, everybody.